Okay, I get it. Maybe the title was a bit too harsh, but I wanted to originally title it "You Are Wasting Your Time," but thought that's a bit too vague of a title. Whatever though. These are some things that are probably a waste of time as far as muscle growth goes. And when I say a waste of time, I mean that even if you were to never learn any of these things I'm about to mention, you're not going to be leaving many, if any, gains on the table. Yes! I see you typing.
You don't need the science to do as well, because why do we care about the science? Just lift and get strong. You don't even need to know that to make gains, and just horse cook the weight and whatever.
And although, to an extent, I agree with the notion that just lifting is king, still, things like training volume, range of motion, triggered, intensity of effort, and others can make a substantial difference to the gains you're making, especially if you're not genetically blessed, enhanced, or brought up in an environment with other lifters to guide you, etc. Having a very basic understanding of the science of lifting can help you. 1. Be very autonomous and flexible as far as your training goes. And 2. Prevent you from falling in the actual paralysis by analysis trap. It is common to hear that science-based lifting is paralysis by analysis, but in reality, every true science-based lifter out there is, or at least should be, well aware of what constitutes actual science versus mumbo-jumbo jargon pseudoscience BS. For many young lifters out there, the internet, including many self-proclaimed experts, can make things appear so much more complicated than they really are. However, let's get into it. Number 1. Periodization. Yes, baby, for muscle growth specifically. When it comes to muscle growth, periodization is often hailed as an essential part of structured training. However, for many lifters, especially for those aiming primarily for hypertrophy, periodization may be more complex than necessary and often offer limited benefits, if any. The theory behind periodization is to systematically vary training variables like intensity, volume, and frequency to optimize performance and adaptation. While this approach can be critical for athletes, including strength athletes, to develop peak performance, skill development, and be ready for their competition on a specific date, the direct impact on muscle growth is less compelling, with the current literature not supporting the idea that periodization is not going to do much for your gains. In fact, overcomplicating training with periodized cycles could lead to wasted time and effort without providing substantial advantages for muscle growth. Research shows that as long as you're training hard, performing enough training volume, and doing a variety of exercises in different rep ranges, the precise timing or structure of variations in training seem to matter far less. Instead of rigidly cycling through phases like strength and hypertrophy or whatever, forcing deload weeks, a more straightforward approach focused on consistently pushing yourself close to failure and being in the gym, as well as taking care of things like sleep and nutrition, while also gradually increasing load or reps and sometimes even sets, is likely the same or more effective for building muscle. No, you do not need to learn about how to structure training macro cycles, geek out over implementing different progression models, or spend much time trying to come up with a theoretical master plan for growth planned 3 months in advance. Some may already be typing, but that careful manipulation of variables will allow for more continuous progress or something along those lines. Will it though? I very much doubt that having a basic but solid lifting program, starting at the lower end of the maximization volume recommendations, and then doing your best during most training sessions to add weight, reps, and eventually some sets to stuff over time while being in a slight calorie surplus, I doubt that that will result in less consistency in the gym or you hitting a brick wall. Many have this fear of what if I overdo it or what if I train too hard? Fears that are, in my opinion, again, heavily exaggerated and don't really hold much ground. Lift the damn weight up and down with intensity for a few weeks, see if you feel absolutely destroyed. If so, slightly adjust your plan and keep going. You do not need 3 lower RPE, whatever, accumulation weeks. You do not need to keep 0 RIR sets for when you've been training consistently for months. Stay in the 0 to 2 reps in reserve range for everything. Push yourself every time you go to the gym and you'll be fine. You're not made of glass and you will know extremely quickly if you're overdoing it. Sure, create a solid, well thought out training program addressing basic scientific principles, but then leave the rascal at paper. If you do not want to even do that, MyoAdapt.com has you covered. The best upcoming training app, one-on-one coaching in the form of an app. The best thing after paying tons of money for a premium online coach is soon near you. It will do everything for you, make the program exactly the way you want it. Your crazy mind can go wild. It will account for your recovery, training experience, previous programs, yada, 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 and it will adjust it every week. Not only don't you have to learn about periodization, you don't need to know anything anymore. It's all there, spoon-fed. Milo Wolf and I are gonna be at your house with spoons, shoving them in your mouth, potentially getting arrested, potentially having to go to prison, and therefore we need your money for the lawyer fees. Length and partials, baby. The stretch code is not getting paid as much as you think. Please buy the app so we can spoon feed you and so you can have an awesome training session. Besides the jokes, top app, check it out. MyoAdapt.com, express interest now, out soon. Dab. Number 2 of things that are likely a waste of time and you shouldn't really care about learning them if you want to maximize muscle growth. And this is a personal favorite of mine, and that is biomechanics jargon, overemphasizing minute changes in technique and body alignment in hope that it will make a big or even meaningful difference to your gains. No! Before you say it, I'm not saying that learning some basic stuff about biomechanics is bad. I'm all for that. But as it stands, aside from a couple of studies on the calves and different foot positions and how they affect muscle growth, we do not have any actual evidence on whether any of the common recommendations you often see in our niche actually make any difference. It's mostly speculation based on biomechanical reasoning. The problem, though, with many recommendations that you see out there is that they are presented with an extreme element of certainty and very few disclaimers as to what you're actually being told. The same goes with a lot of stuff in powerlifting too, for example, and form. Like, sure, twisting your elbow slightly when doing that one exercise, if that feels better, whatever, do it that way. However, for many people, including myself when I was younger and hadn't gone into lifting science, I think many people fear that they may be missing out on a shit ton of growth or progress just because they're not fully aware of all the details behind biomechanics for different exercises, how to perform them, how different equipment affects muscle growth, yada, yada, yada. We literally have close to zero actual evidence that any of that stuff matters, even to a small degree. People lose their minds when we are talking about training volume or the stretch, and they're happy to call out the research and like the limitations and this and that and the other, but are happy to consume a shit ton of information with zero actual references, and often, and that's what grinds my gears, presented in a not so cautious manner.
And before you type it, yes, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. I hear you.
However, if you're ticking basic boxes as far as your exercise technique goes, hashtag stretch goal, and you're performing a few different exercises for each muscle group, it is extremely unlikely that modifying your cable lat pull down or slightly flaring your elbow more on chest press will actually be something of insane importance to your gains. Getting into the nitty-gritty of biomechanics, unless it's your hobby, to me, is personally more on the side of waste of time on the muscle building spectrum. And that's me being relatively chill about it and assuming that you're somebody who wants to absolutely maximize muscle growth and wants to make every educated bet in the world they can in order to do so. I would go as far as to say that for your average, even hashtag optimal bro, y'all are freaking it with biomechanics, again, not talking about basic knowledge, that's totally fine, is a waste of time. But again, if you enjoy learning about biomechanics and playing around with your technique and exercise selection as a hobby, be my guest. I enjoy learning about watches as a hobby. To each their own. However, watches, much cooler. Number 3, recovery practices. Unless you're an athlete that sometimes has to train multiple times per day and is also lifting in between competitive events, learning and implementing commonly advertised recovery modalities or practices is a waste of time for muscle growth. I obviously do not mean things like eating, sleeping, and managing stress. I'm talking about things like cold water immersion, foam rolling, spending a ton of time stretching, hell, even sport massage. I know, you're slamming your keyboard right now and losing your mind, but don't hate me. Hate the data, player. The above things can help with things like alleviating soreness and even improving some markers of performance that are likely important to athletes. But if you're somebody who's training specifically for muscle growth, spending time and mental energy on things like the above is not really worth it. You're not getting any substantial, or for most people, meaningful recovery benefits, and in some cases you're spending both time and money, and time is money, so you're spending double the money. As always, if getting a sport massage here and there relaxes you, that's cool. Even I go once every blue moon for one. Insert happy ending joke, cringe, scriptwriter, you're so predictable. Wait a second, I am the script writer and I'm still reading the script, which has the joke of me reading the script built into it. What is happening? Anyways, me losing it aside, if your favorite lifter is making you feel like you're missing out on gains because you didn't get a massage, or because you need to foam roll before every session, or you need to get a massage gun, you need to start looking somewhere else for guidance. Lastly, and I guess leastly, comes the idea of needing to change exercises every few months to trigger new growth or whatever. Unless you're sick and tired of a specific exercise, or you have overuse injuries because you're doing the same thing over and over again, you do not need to actually change anything. There's no need for you to change a program or change an exercise. If it feels good, keep it. No, your body is not immune to the bench press, nor are your biceps unable to grow because you're doing the same curl variation for a bunch of months. Assuming all the basics are in place and that your program still has some variation built in it, you're covered. Give it some time, bro. Give it time. Muscle growth takes years and needs consistent work, and a lot of your potential gains are hinging on you falling in love with lifting itself, not changing things or any sort of magic trick. On the contrary though, the idea that program hopping will ruin your gains is also BS. No, you won't lose gains or leave many gains on the table, even if you're doing things slightly differently on a weekly basis. Sure, I don't mean you trying extremely new exercises every week. That shit may not be ideal, especially if you're super sore all the time. But if you want to do your staple exercises on different days, different rep ranges, whatever, that's totally fine. But standardization, shut up. Up with your standardization, honestly. The idea of standardization being something so complex and so critical is so overblown, to the point where I have an entire video just on that. So I won't insert that sort of yap here. Check it out. And that's the end of the video, ladies and gentlemen. RascalApparel.com and Dynamos t-shirt. Greeks all over the world representing. Where is the sleeve? There is the sleeve. You know the vibe. Shout out Vita to RascalApparel.com, DRPAK, 10% off. Get yourself t-shirts and stuff. MyoAdapt.com, express interest, want to work with me, one-to-one coaching. First time I've ever said that on camera. I don't know why I thought of it now. DRPAK.com, send me an email. I'm not sure if there's going to be space, but if there is, hey, we can work together and we can become best friends and live a life full of glory. Yeah, MyoAdapt. Peace. See you next time. Subscribe, buy me stuff. Gone.